So SI bites the dust? Who would have thought? This is RamView.
It's hot out there. Let's blow them off the line of scrimmage. Headline, Los Angeles.
Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Terosian, and this is RamView, the January 19th, 2024 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident? Need help? Got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. That's Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLaw.com. That's one word, KistlerLawFirm.com. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since 92. And by Temple City Auto Repair. Having some auto issues? Get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. And of course, by Granite Ridge Christian Camp, a place where your life can change. All right. Is this the end of Sports Illustrated? Word came out today they're laying off most of their staff, if not all their staff of writers. And I don't know if they're officially dead, but it sure seems like the docs are in the ICU. They haven't called it yet, but they're working on them hard. And they may survive, but it sounds like they're not going to. And the truth is, SI stopped being a sports medium for information over 20 years ago, right? They got preachy, right?
Stay in your lane, bro.
Well, I am staying in my lane, but the problem was SI didn't stay in its lane. It was a sports magazine. They got preachy. They started telling you what your business should be outside of sports. They started trying to influence what you think about issues away from sports, how you should feel. You know, they put dudes in bikinis in the swimsuit issue, heavy-set women in the swimsuit issue, trying to fit in. They drank the Kool-Aid of the culture. They willingly downed the hemlock. They moved away from their base, and now it is what it is. If you're about sports, be about sports.
Stay in your lane, bro.
Absolutely. You guys know what my day job is. I don't open or close each show with a prayer or preach out of the Bible in between. It's called RamView. We talk about the Rams and football. That's what you tuned in for. Sports Illustrated was deluded about their level of influence. They thought they could have some kind of influence. Whoever owned them thought they could have some kind of influence. Their writers were no longer really giving us an inside look at sports. They were trying to influence us in regards to the social issues and our worldviews and everything in our culture. And now they're dying. And I'm going to say this, and people aren't going to like it, but I'm glad they are. I want all these pseudo sports shows and media groups to go away because they're invading and squatting in the space of people who do this job really well. There's a lot of good writers and good reporters and good people out there that are not employed because they don't follow the shtick, the game of what Sports Illustrated and others like it have done. And now they're biting the dust. And I can hear it already. And I hear it all the time from my moderate friends. Well, Joe, don't you care about people being put out of work? Hey, no one wants anybody put out of work. But if you're in the sports industry and you couldn't see what's happening and what's happened at SSI, Sports Illustrated coming, then we can't help you. You know, they became full high energy to try and influence the culture and attained zero credibility and had zero integrity along the way when it came to sports. Sports Illustrated is the perfect example of how you get people at an NFL presser asking Todd Bowles if his team is ready to deal with the frigid weather in Detroit. You know, the white reporter asking the black coach and telling him how important representation is. You know what? Why don't you talk about how he's going to use his defense to counteract all those weapons Detroit has? But nope, we got to score points, and this is why they're finished. And I'll finish with this. What really bugs me the most is I still think there's room for print media out there if it's done well, right? If it's done well, there's still room for print.
Stay in your lane, bro.
There's still room for print media if you stay in your lane and do it well. But it takes a lot of courage to do that because I think the narrative is almost complete that print media is just about dead. And I think if they were still producing quality stuff, it might be a little bit different. That's just my thoughts that kind of came to me on that one. Okay, Ram stuff. Bill, thank you for being out there. I will get to those questions, I promise, at mid-show. I posted a column on my website yesterday, trying to get back into the groove of posting stuff on my column. I've had some website issues a little bit, but joetarosian.com. I've got different things listed there, buttons. You could always click on the RamView button, maybe a little bit on the NFL, but I'm just starting to post stuff there again. And I posted one on my website that talked about the top 100 and what the Rams have done in the top 100 during the Les Snead era. And Snead today said it's too early to tell if the Rams will pick in the first round. And I thought that was interesting. The Rams have 3 picks in the top 100 in this year's draft. In the first round, number 19, second round, 51, in the third round, number 73. Those are premium picks. Those are really nice picks. If you look at the history of Les Snead and his time, in the Snead era, they've made 34 picks in the top 100, 21 for offense, 13 for defense. They've picked up in that stretch 23 starters, contributors, players who have done something, right? You know, players like you wouldn't consider them stars, you didn't re-sign them. Players like Taylor Rapp, right? Players like Taylor Rapp that really produced some good moments for the Rams and such, but they were drafted in the top 100. They whiffed 11 times. And I'll let you tell me if you don't think or these guys aren't whiffs, but in the top 100 in the whole Snead era, they've drafted players like Greg Robinson, Bobby Evans, Jamon Brown, Brian Quick, Chris Givens, Tavon Austin, Stedman Daly, Trey Mason, Isaiah Peed, David Long, and Terrell Lewis in the top 100. And those guys, I view them all as whiffs. If you have an argument to make for one of those guys, let me know. The Rams could trade back, right? And in several scenarios, they could pick up 3 more draft picks by trading back. And I love that because that's volume, right? It's a great question at number 19 because at number 19, there will be corners and edge rushers available. I looked at one mock draft already up, and it projected the Rams taking Kool-Aid McKinstry at Alabama. So I thought that was interesting. So I could see them moving back, picking up volume. The Rams had 14 picks last year. 6 of them were definite hits. And I'll put Davis Allen in that category. And of course, the jury's still out on a couple of players like THT, Travius Hodges Tomlinson. Speaking of corners, the last serious draft capital the Rams invested at corner was on Ty Hill in the first round in 2006. That's a long time to go, right? And of late, the results have been mixed on players they've taken either in the top 100 or in the mid to late rounds at cornerback. It's early, but I think there was an expectation for Travius Hodges Tomlinson to be one of those guys that was a hit this year, and he barely saw the field. Darian Kendrick has had his problems. Kobe Durant has struggled to stay on the field. Robert Rochelle and David Long were whiffs. Rochelle was gone after his second year, and David Long played out his rookie contract, and then he's bounced around the NFL since. The last time the Rams really hit at quarterback was 2014 when they took LaMarcus Joyner 41st overall. Now, Joyner was a bit of a hybrid, but he played that slot corner, played some safety, and he did a good job. And he was also the last Ram player. I want someone to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he was the last Ram players to be franchise tagged heading into the 2018 season. The Rams got good quality in their 2012 draft, but let me just emphasize, that was the 2012 draft when they took Janoris Jackrabbit Jenkins at 39 and Trumaine Johnson at 65. And just stuff to think about there when it comes to what have the Rams done at corner. Who should the Rams or should the Rams go after a quarterback? I've heard that argument. I've heard a couple of places talk about J.J. McCarthy. You know, McCarthy's mobile. McCarthy's got a fairly decent arm. He's a winner. Much more pro style body than, say, Stetson Bennett, right? But before we even get into that game, to me, the key is Carson Wentz. Matthew Stafford has shown that if he's healthy, he's got 2 more years left in that arm at minimum. And that means the Super Bowl window is open. And if the Super Bowl window is open, You don't want to mess around with some retread hack like Brett Rippon, and you don't want to go for some reach like Stetson Bennett. And I don't even know if I want a rookie quarterback there if I'm Aaron Donald or Cooper Kupp or Rob Havenstein as we head into the second decade of our NFL careers. Do I really want a rookie back there, even if it is, let's say, a J.J. McCarthy? And so that's why I think Wentz is the key. I really want Wentz to stay. And if they can convince Wentz to stay, they wouldn't have to reach in the top 100 for a quarterback. And I really don't want them to, right? Any place after the top 100, go find a quarterback, get Wentz to stay, and develop the kid for the next few years. Stetson Bennett was a whiff at number 128. I think that could be pretty much official now, right? As I've said about the Rams Super Bowl window, it officially opens March 13th with the start of the new league season. And they really shouldn't dilly around with a rookie or retread veteran at quarterback, right? Then you got to think about, even if Stafford is healthy, even if the line keeps him upright, there's just always that potential for the fluke banging the hand on somebody's helmet. How many times did that happen this year with Stafford? When you think about how he never fumbled this year, or he only fumbled once, I think. He was kept upright most of the season, but that right hand, was as mangled as his rest of his body was by the end of last season. Something to think about. I want a cornerback. I think I want that first. I think if it's there and it presents itself in the top 100, I'd go get an edge, but I really want a frontline corner. I have no problems with the Rams taking another wide receiver. We don't know what's going to happen with Demarcus Robinson. And as it stands right now, I don't think the Rams dislike Tutu Atwell. I just don't think they're going to re-sign him. And so you're going to need another wide receiver in the fold. So I wouldn't have a problem if they took another wide receiver in the top 100 or another offensive lineman. I'd be cool with them taking a wide receiver in the top 100 and then drafting 2 O-linemen later in the draft. That's my thing. I think you got to draft linemen every year. Almost like the Rams draft a safety every year. They need to draft offensive linemen. That's just the key to everything. Something I'd really like to see before the draft and everything gets crazy is, and I'll take correction on this from you folks, because I'd love to know what you think, is I'd find a way to extend Ernest Jones now if he's willing. He's going into the last year of his contract. He plays off-ball linebacker. You got to remember, the Rams won a Super Bowl with Troy Reeder as the off-ball linebacker, okay? It's not a premium position. They brought in Bobby Wagner last year. Bobby Wagner played great. They got rid of him, and it really didn't affect much of anything, did it, right? But I think what we see in Ernest Jones, though, there's that ability to show he can get to the quarterback. I think he needs to be utilized even in a more creative way. Put him on the edge once in a while. See what he can do. I just think he's flexible that way. You don't put too much money into off-ball linebackers. The exceptions being Fred Warner, Bobby Wagner, and maybe Roquan Smith. But I'd like to see the Rams see if they can extend him now before he hits the market, maybe get a better deal out of it. And again, talk about Jones. He wasn't a top 100 pick. Third round, 104 in 2021, and I think he was a compensatory. Was he a compensatory? Maybe. I think he might have been one of the Brad Holmes compensatories. We'll look into that. But I do like him. And then there's Alaric Jackson. He feels like a tweener. He's a restricted free agent, so if the Rams want him, they're going to keep him. It's not going to be a big deal. But the question is he good enough to lock in at left tackle? And that's a great question to answer. I think we like Coleman Shelton, but I think everyone knows we could probably do better than Coleman Shelton, although he was great this year, very solid. But I think everyone knows, I think that's a consensus. We know we can do better than Coleman Shelton. But Alaric Jackson, is he? The restricted free agent. He was an undrafted free agent out of Iowa. The Rams have developed him. They're getting so many clicks out of him. His play after the bye this year was tremendous. It was. PFF, and I'm just going by what PFF says here, they only tagged him with 1 sack surrendered all season. His pass blocking is solid to very good. His run blocking, maybe not so, because he runs a little light for a left tackle. He's 285. And so his run blocking could be better. But that's a great question to put out there for Ram fans, right? What do you think of Alaric Jackson? Is he the left tackle that we go forward with? Or, as an undrafted free agent, have we milked the best out of him? And is this his ceiling? I'd like to look at his draft. If there was a draft to file on him and see why wasn't a guy like Alaric Jackson drafted? How many teams have whiffed? If the Rams could have got out of Greg Robinson what they get out of Alaric Jackson, and Greg Robinson was the number 2 overall pick, can you imagine our feelings about Greg Robinson today? Or is it Jason or Justin Smith? Jason Smith in 2009. And none of those guys have given us what an undrafted free agent like Alaric Jackson has given us. And so yeah, he's this tweener, So around the NFL and other places, Cowboys didn't fire Mike McCarthy. I think that was a good move. I wouldn't have fired him. I wouldn't punish him for his quarterback. And I think, as this was the best Dak Prescott's ever been, and it still wasn't good enough to advance the Cowboys in the playoffs. They own 59 rocks next year. And if I was a Cowboys fan, which thank goodness I'm not, but if I was a Cowboys fan, I think I'd turn in my star if Dallas extends Prescott's contract after the 2024 season. There's talk about a restructure that would allow them to spread some of that money out, maybe get Dak to take a little bit less because the Cowboys do have salary cap issues. And so, yeah, it's kind of tricky, but that means you keep Prescott at quarterback. And I think after 8 years, isn't it kind of shown that Dak Prescott's not the guy? But I'm glad they kept Mike McCarthy. Andy Reid, every year this kind of comes up. Andy Reid and his snotsicles, are they ready to retire? And you ever looked at Andy Reid? His health can't be good, right? In one sense, he's 65. That's not that old for a head coach when you think about what Saban was still doing at Alabama, and of course Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick and everything. But Andy Reid doesn't look 65. He looks like he's 75, right? And Steve Ramirez, sports writer, brought this up because I was asking this question. Have not heard a lot of buzz about Eric Bieniemy at all this offseason. Not at all. Now, I know Washington didn't have a great year, but Bieniemy is the poster child for, guy that interviews all the time but never gets a job. And I think some of that might be maybe he doesn't interview well. I've known in my career, in whether it's sports or even in ministry, there's a lot of guys who are very competent, very qualified, but you know what? They don't interview real well. They mumble, they stumble, or they just come off with a tone that people don't like or feel comfortable with. But we've been hearing Eric Bieniemy for the last 5 years, and this year it's really quiet on him. They said that he was being considered for the job in D.C., and our good friend Steve Ramirez mentioned that, and I think so too, that he's the guy that Kansas City would lean to because Mahomes has familiarity with him, would lean to if Andy Reid stepped down. I'd be surprised if they went with a Matt Nagy, right? Some free agents to keep in thought. Speaking of the Chiefs, L'Jarius Sneed, Chris Jones, their left tackle, Donovan Smith, his name escapes me right now. They've got some issues there, right? But Chris Jones is going to be considered the number 1 free agent. He wants Aaron Donald money, and I wouldn't give it to him. I think he's good. I just don't want to get hamstrung for 30 rocks to a DT who's pushing 30, if not there already. Kirk Cousins, of course, is out there, said he wouldn't mind playing for Belichick. And then, of course, the edge guys, Josh Allen and Brian Burns are out there. Jacksonville for Josh Allen, Carolina for Brian Burns. But, Josh Allen recorded 19 sacks. Either the Jaguars are going to pay him or they're going to franchise tag him. That's what I would think. And same thing with Brian Burns in Carolina. Although, you think Carolina might want to move on from Brian Burns. I think Brian Burns might want to move on from Carolina. And I think Carolina missed the boat, is they should have traded Brian Burns mid-season this year because now, of course, he's a free agent. And, none of these players are happy when they're franchise tagged. T. Higgins came on strong late. He's another key guy out there. And he was horrible at the beginning of the season. And then he came on strong at the end. And you wonder where he's going to land. And then, like I said, L'Jarius Sneed and Jalen Johnson of the Bears are the top corners out there. And it'd be interesting. Would the Rams sign one of these corners and then draft an edge? would they draft a corner and then sign an edge? I don't know. I'd rather draft a corner and sign an edge, but we'll see how that goes on. Coaching carousel, nothing looks like it's going to change in Dallas and Pittsburgh. It seems like Philly is still up in the air. They said Sirianni is a meeting with Lurie and the staff there and the admin there in Philadelphia. So that's no one's sure about that. Jared Mayo got the job with the Patriots. And of course, went the SI route in the rest of his presser. When they ask those questions, and I'm not going to get into it, the coaches just need to say, stupid question, ask me about football. The Raiders have confirmed that Antonio Pierce is the guy. So that job is closed, which leaves the Seahawks, the Titans, the Texans, the Falcons, Panthers, and of course the Chargers open. And I imagine after Jim Harbaugh makes his decision, we'll see other decisions kind of fall into place. All right, we've hit the 20-minute mark. I'm Joe Terosian. I was a sports writer for 21 years, one of the founding members at Mid-Valley Sports. Those guys are still in the room, Tim and Dwayne. They cover They cover the Los Angeles Chargers. I just know where I want the Chargers to go. They cover the Los Angeles Chargers. They're in the room there. And I get to do RamView thanks to our sponsors at Kistler Law and, of course, Temple City Auto. Be sure to check them out. And I write books. My books are on Amazon. You can just type in my name, Joe Terosian, and you'll see my books. I've written 2 high school football novels, and they were well received. And I've done some other work. And between RamView and my writing, it allows me to stay in my day job as I pastor a small church in Burbank called Burbank Faith Nazarene. And our website is Burbank Faith Virtual, and you could follow us right here on YouTube at Burbank Faith Virtual channel and such. So that's all around social media. So I want to say thank you for all the clicks. I want to say thank you for all the support. We're going to be here Monday, Wednesday, Friday throughout the off season. We're not really going to go dark at any point because I think there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And I'll let you guys throw your questions. It's been going pretty good in that regard. And we'll just keep talking Rams football and the NFL all the way through this off season until we get to kickoff next year. So happy to be here. Please check us out on Spotify. Our numbers are not great on Spotify. We've had a really slow start there. And as I've shared with others, I thought Spotify was where we would start and then come over to YouTube. But YouTube actually started better than Spotify did. And that's because you guys click on. Let's look at some of the questions today from Bill. Did you listen to Les Snead's year-end press conference? It sounds like Morris is going to get a job. Yeah, that did sound like it, right? And that means that door is open for a DC, and we can start a whole debate about whether or not we want Brandon Staley to come back. I don't think I want Brandon Staley to come back, but if Sean McVay can beat him into submission and to just be a DC and everything again, and he can perform like he did in 2020, I guess that's cool. What I do like is I have grown fond of Raheem Morris. I was not happy with him for a long time, and I thought he did a fantastic job this year. And what's exciting, though, is that if he gets a head coaching job, the Rams get 2 third-round draft picks back-to-back years. That's really going to be good. Les sounds like he's going to re-sign a lot of our own players. Yeah, that would be marvelous, right? Especially when you look. I'm going to slide down here and look at my my list of Ram free agents again. Kevin Dotson, Carson Wentz, Demarcus Robinson, Akilla Witherspoon. Then you got Jordan Fuller, John Johnson. And then you got the restricted free agents that I think pretty much likely don't have a whole lot of places to go because it's just the way the system is set up. Alaric Jackson, Jonah Williams, Christian Roseboom, Michael Hoyt, and such. So that part looks pretty good. So yeah, I think the Rams know. I think the Rams know that their window is opening for the next season. From Tim Powers. Oh no, let's see. Bill, no interest in weekend games. Thinking about draft and free agency. I don't know. Bill, the thing that's kind of interested me is that all of a sudden now I'm dreading there's no Thursday game. I know we complain about it. I'm one of the guys that complain about it, but there's no Thursday game, and I want to see a Thursday game. And there's not going to be a Monday night game, and it's kind of winding down. And I think I'm going to start going to the withdrawals because I watch TV. I watch Seinfeld reruns, Office reruns, The Community, and the Rams. That's kind of what I watch. And then I'll put on something in the background when I get up in the morning that I kind of half pay attention to. So I am interested in this week's games. Mr. Powers, waiting for the release date of your Rams book. Thank you for asking. My Rams book is just going through rounds of edits, not to get out of my lane. I'm going to stay in my lane.
Stay in your lane,
but
bro.
my wife was hit by a car in December, and it really knocked everything out of whack for us as far as time and my commitment to certain things. And so that book got put on the back burner a little bit. We're in rounds of edits now, and I'm hoping within a month now to get it out. And it's a novel, and it's basically called Game Day in the Ram Cave, and it's basically about people watching a football game and how crazy we can get when we watch one. Bill, Avila to center, Jackson to left guard, and get a left tackle in free agency. I took a bit of a hit in certain places when I brought up the Avila thing to center, Bill. Isn't that kind of funny? I did. I took a few hits on that, but that was what he was in college, and that's what some of the people were projecting him in the pros. So it wasn't like I was creating something like Florio out of whole cloth. And it is a possibility. And maybe if the Rams find another guard they really like, I believe Avila would be successful at whatever he does. I truly believe that. And so it's hard to believe that Brian Allen's going to be back next year, even though he's making significant money. I think the Rams might take that hit and get out from his contract. It'll be interesting to see. He provides great depth, but if the Rams can find another guard in the draft that's really a beast that they really feel confident in, then you could move Avila to center, re-sign Dotson, and then the most important thing for a guy like Matthew Stafford, it's not the edge rush, it's the rush coming up the middle that prevents him from stepping up in the pocket, right? And so thank you for bringing that up, Bill. That's a great point. Mr. Powers, let's see. EJ Gaines, decent cornerback for the Rams. He just wasn't a top 100 pick, and such. I guess maybe I missed him in my draft list. I've got my draft list over here, and I'm trying to figure out, did I miss EJ Gaines in the draft? And I'm wondering, how did the Rams acquire EJ Gaines? And so I'm looking at it right now. I'm seeing where did I miss? EJ Gaines. You're right. He played some DB, corner, and safety. I guess I just didn't list him as a corner, but he was drafted 110 overall in 2014 out of Missouri. See, I got all my stuff here, Mr. Powers. I work hard to get ready. Love The Office. Great cast. Yeah, what we try to do in my house, Bill, that's Bill asking or saying that he loves The Office. What we do with The Office is we kind of project like, who in the NFL would be Michael Scott, right? Who would be Stanley? And I think Stanley would be Bill Belichick, right? Doesn't want to talk to anybody, always grumpy, right? We do stuff like that all the time, and everything. So cool. All right, great. We got those questions in, guys. Keep firing them because we'll go back to them at the end of the show, and we'll go from there. Rams updates. The Rams re-signed kicker Tanner Brown, and he was out of Oklahoma State, and he kicked for the Rams all offseason in camp through the preseason, and then they kicked him to the curb and signed Brett Maher. Now, Brown doesn't have a big leg, but they were talking about how he never misses inside short range, inside 40 or anything like that. And I have to admit, the practice that I was at with my brother, he didn't miss. I don't think he's got a big leg, but if he's accurate, right now, all the Rams want is somebody who can make extra points, right? Just make the extra point. And then when McVay bogs down the offense in the red zone, it's only a 35-yard field goal that the Rams have to kick. Hopefully, McVay will work out that stuff. But Tanner Brown is back. Former Rams, Jacob Harris and Terrell Lewis. Both draft picks, and as I just shared, Terrell Lewis was a top 100 pick for the Rams. Terrell Lewis was drafted third round, 84th overall out of Alabama. He had the body, but he didn't have the motor, right? And he just never produced. And he was a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. Yeah, he was a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. And then in 2021, Jacob Harris was drafted out of Central Florida, tight end, wide receiver, had kind of a Nelson Spruce preseason. He looked like this big target, fourth round, 130 overall. and played 2 years for the Rams, kind of broke that a little bit, just wasn't there, a special teams guy. And, here's the thing. He was jumped by Ben Skoranek, right, who was drafted 7th round at 249. And I think the Rams expected Jacob Harris to give them maybe that and a little bit more than Skoranek did, and Skoranek has. And that's why Jacob Harris has bounced around the league. And now he was signed to a futures contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, let's look at Saturday's games. Texans-Ravens. Texans have never won in Baltimore. Injuries-wise, Mark Andrews doesn't look like he's going to play, or Marlon Humphrey. Texans are going to be without Jerry Hughes. I really don't go with the questionable, because if a player at this point is listed as questionable, generally they're going to hit the field. And so I'm just trying to focus on the guys that are out. My thoughts are in this game, 3 weeks off, suspect playoff performances in the past, kind of tells me Baltimore is vulnerable. So I'm going to risk this. And I'll risk it for the biscuit, as they say. I'm going to take Houston 27-25. I know it's a reach, but I'm just going to do it because, you get a hunch, you get a feeling. Packers 49ers. These teams have had some great playoff games. We talked about that. Packers, Jair Alexander, who did play against the Cowboys. He had some injuries earlier in the year, came back, played, got the pick. He went out with an injury. I will talk about him being listed as questionable, but I think being questionable, I still think he's going to be out there. And for the 49ers, everyone got healthy, only Cleveland Farrell, the former Raider bust who found a home in the Bay, he's out for the 49ers. My thoughts on this is I really don't want the 49ers to win, so my judgment's a little clouded. I'm dreaming, Here's an awful thing about me. In football, I always want the Rams to win. But then maybe that's one. Maybe 1A is seeing teams like the Cowboys and 49ers not make the Super Bowl or lose a big game. It fills me with great joy, and that's a spiteful side of me. I could be considered a bitter man, but how marvelous would it be to see the whining and the crying that takes place in Frisco if the Packers come in and upset them, right? So I don't think the Packers know enough to know anything about what magnitude this is. I think they're just going to play. So I think they got a shot. And because of my bitterness, and this is why we don't bet, right? Betting should be without emotion. I don't bet, and I don't tell you to bet, but my bitterness is forcing me to go to the dark side on this. And I'm going to go with Green Bay 31-24, and I might be laughed out of the building, but no one thought Green Bay had a shot in Dallas, and they did. And let's remember, the coach of the San Francisco 49ers is the OC of the team in the Super Bowl that had a 28-3 lead over the New England Patriots and lost the Super Bowl, right? I know Dan Quinn was the head coach of the Falcons, but Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator, and his team was up 28-3. And you can't put it all on him, but it's Kyle Shanahan, so I will. All right, so go Packers, right? Buccaneers, Lions. I think there's no real significant injuries, too much to talk about that aren't just listed as questionable. I think the Bucs have exceeded expectations, and it was easy against the Eagles, which was a team that was going down. Their weapons were limited, but Detroit has too many weapons, from Montgomery to Gibbs to those receivers. If Laporta played against the Rams, he's going to play against them, and they're in Detroit. And I'm happy for Baker Mayfield. I hope Mayfield throws 3 touchdowns, doesn't get picked, has a great game. But I'm kind of rooting for Detroit in this one. But I also think Detroit has too many weapons. I'm going with Detroit 38-21. And that brings us to the Chiefs-Bills, right? Is this Andy Reid's swan song? Hopefully the weather won't be so bad so we don't get any snotsicles from Andy Reid. But I do think the Swift factor is in effect. She's bad mojo, man. Bad mojo for your team. And the Bills, though, however, even though they're at home, that's the good thing. Gabe Davis, Chris Benford, and Taylor Rapp are all out. And Rasul Douglas, who's been fantastic since coming over from Green Bay, he leaves Green Bay, and you think Green Bay's punting on the season, but Green Bay takes off. Rasul Douglas has had a great season for the Bills, but he, along with Tyrell Dodson, Taron Johnson, Terrell Bernard, they will be game time decisions. So there's a lot of injuries there in Buffalo. The Chiefs have Sky Moore, He's one key guy there. Derek Nadi and Wanya Morris are out. These teams are banged up, but I just get a feeling, I don't think Travis Kelce is as reliable as he used to be. I think that limits Mahomes' weapons. I think the Bills might be vulnerable to the pass, but I don't think they're vulnerable to the run. And I do think Josh Allen is going to find a way. And I also won't sell short. Taylor Swift and her bad mojo will likely, possibly, maybe be in the house. And I think Bulls Mafia is going to take the Chiefs freshwater fishing with Fredo and dump them in the lake. So I'm going Buffalo 23-20. All right, I think we got it there. Good. It was a stone groove, but I'm not done yet. I'm not done. On this date in Ram history in 2006, they hired Scott Linehan as head coach. After an 8-8 first year, everything went downhill real fast. But I don't want to, we might do a revisit on Linehan like we did on Malavasi a few months ago. But here's the thing about Linehan is that, yeah, maybe he wasn't a good guy, but, he did get some good years out of Mark Bulger. And I think Mark Bulger was a really underrated quarterback for the Rams. But, after the 2001 Super Bowl, the Rams were horrid in drafting. Horrid. They were just awful. And they had tons of draft picks, and they really botched all of them. I mean, Damian Lewis, Jimmy Kennedy, they just, Alex Barron. I mean, they just, that is the recipe on how to destroy a team for over a decade. And I think Scott Linehan was the first guy in the way of the fire. But, he hasn't really gone on and done, huge things since, but, just a little bit of a revisit there. Tomorrow is January 20th, and January 20th is kind of a significant day in Ram history. It was the day that the Rams in 1980 played the Steelers in Super Bowl 14, and they lost 31-19. Thank you, Eddie Brown. On a lesser scale, I'll say Nolan Cromwell. The Rams had that game. I still get emotional about that game. I watch it over and over again on the NFL Films thing, and I think somehow it's going to be different. I think I've shared this before. Every time I watch Ferragamo throw that pick to Lambert, it's like watching the Dirty Dozen and thinking Jim Brown's going to make it to the half track, right? On this day in 2000, or on January 20th, 2002, the Rams won a division playoff game. And they beat the Green Bay Packers 45-17 in St. Louis. That was when the Rams were on the road back to the Super Bowl 36. Brent Favre threw 6 interceptions that day, not 36. He threw 6 interceptions that day. Mr. Tim Burns, this is why I lean Matthew Stafford over Brett Favre. And then in 2019, God bless Nickel Roby-Coleman, right? The Rams won the NFC title. They beat the Saints on January 20th, 2019 in New Orleans, because, after Katrina, the Saints have to get all the close calls and always win. And the Rams got one, The Rams got one. And I didn't think it was much of a pass interference penalty anyway on Nickel Roby-Coleman. But I will say this, when the NFL changed the rules about overtime because it wasn't fair to the Bills and the Bills-Chiefs game that, whoever gets first possession and scores first, because whoever gets possession first always scores. It's not true. In that game went to overtime after a great Zerline kick and a stud drive by Jared Goff. The Saints got possession first. They got first possession at home, and all the whiners and everyone that complains about the overtime rules, it should have worked out that the Saints won that game. They didn't. Thank you, Dante Fowler. Thank you, JJ. And thank you, Greg Zerline, for that win. I admit, I probably put the Saints right up there with the Cowboys on teams I despise the most. On this day in on January 20th, 1997, another big day, the Rams hired Dick Vermeil as head coach. They had fired Rich Brooks 2 days or a day after the season ended in 96. Spent a couple of weeks searching and then worked out a deal with Dick Vermeil. And January 21st, not much. Rams hired a couple people, Steve Fairchild. We'll get into that later, but that's nothing big. And I think that's it. I think we got it all in. All right. Bill, did you see the exchange between Stafford and Kirby Jackson, the guy who hit Higbee? Yeah, I did. Again, I don't know what a defender is supposed to do these days. You can't hit him high. And, I thought Dan Campbell's explanation was good. He said, keep your eyes open, watch what you hit. And, like he said, I think he described it as he was aiming for the thigh board and it went a little low. I don't know. I don't know if it's could really be labeled as dirty. Maybe because us older folk, our level of dirty is, haymakers from Jack Tatum and George Atkinson, right? Those kind of hits where they come swinging in to knock you out. And so when you see something else, it doesn't strike you necessarily as dirty. But the NFL's got a problem there because, anything up high is going to get called. And so you don't want to go high and you got to go kind of a little bit lower. But I think I mentioned that Kirby is like 6'1", 205, Higbee's 6'6", 255. If he hits him, if he hits him in the torso there, he's probably going to bounce off. I don't know. But I did think it was interesting, and again, good for a Stafford defending his receiver and everything. And from his perspective, he probably thought, yeah, maybe it is. They've seen other tape on him and that might be their opinion. And I think, that goes without saying. All right, guys, thank you so much for sticking with me and everyone that clicked on. Thanks for sticking around. And we will be back. We're going to load this up on Spotify, spread this around social media. But God bless, take care. And we are going to be back here on Monday, Wednesday, and I might be doing a show on Thursday instead of Friday. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.